the quiet watcher. The first sliver of morning light, thin and hesitant, crept across the concrete floor of Kennel 17. Rue, a sleek black Labrador, lay perfectly still, a dark silhouette against the brightening wall. Her eyes, deep brown and remarkably steady, tracked the shifting light, not with curiosity or eagerness, but with an almost meditative focus. 7 months had blurred into a quiet routine within these walls, a testament to her profound patience. A cheerful clatter announced the arrival of Sarah, a morning volunteer. She paused at Rue's kennel, a bright red squeaky toy held aloft. "Good morning, beautiful girl. Ready to play?" she cooed, wiggling the toy enticingly. Rue's gaze, however, remained fixed. No wagging tail, no twitch of an ear, just that unwavering watchfulness. Sarah sighed softly, her smile fading slightly. "Still observing, huh?" she murmured, before moving on to the more boisterous residents. Rue's kennel was meticulously kept, a reflection of her own calm demeanor. Her blanket lay unfolded and pristine, her water bowl sparkled, and the air held no scent of anxiety or distress. It was a space of quietude, an anomaly in the symphony of barks and whines that characterized the shelter. She wasn't aloof, not truly. Her stillness wasn't disinterest, but a profound, almost palpable anticipation. She was a silent sentinel, her gaze sweeping over every passerby, every shadow, every fleeting expression, as if searching for a signal only she could perceive. The staff had long since given up trying to decode her, labeling her simply the quiet watcher. They knew she wasn't shut down, nor was she traumatized. She was just waiting, days of waiting. The days blurred into a familiar rhythm for Rue, a steady hum of shelter life. Children, their faces pressed against the chain link, often stopped at her kennel. Their high-pitched giggles and whispered, "Look, a black dog," were met with her unblinking gaze. She remained a still, dark silhouette, absorbing their curious energy without a flicker of response. Their small hands, reaching through the gaps, never tempted her to approach. She was the quiet watcher, always. A new volunteer, a young woman with a bouncy ponytail, walked her designated path one afternoon. She paused, her smile ready, expecting the usual excited barks or a wagging tail. Rue simply held her stare, a deep, knowing quietness in her dark eyes. The volunteer, after an awkward moment, continued on, a faint frown replacing her earlier cheer. No licks, no nudges, just that profound, unwavering observation. Later, as the clatter of kibble filled the air, signaling dinner, the shelter director, Marion, made her rounds. She stopped by Rue's kennel, watching the sleek dog eat with a methodical calmness that always struck her as unusual. Most dogs, even the most sedate, showed some eagerness, some quickening of pace. Rue consumed her meal with the same measured composure she displayed in every other aspect of her existence. Marion often mused that Rue wasn't just existing. She was preserving herself, holding something in reserve, waiting. Meet and greet misfires. The double doors swung open, admitting a flurry of youthful energy. A mother, a father, and 2 small children, clutching a worn tennis ball, approached Rue's kennel. "Fetch, girl. Wanna play fetch?" the older boy chirped, tossing the fuzz-covered sphere. It bounced once, twice, a few feet from Rue's nose. She remained a still, charcoal statue, her dark eyes tracking the ball's arc. Then the boy's eager face, but offering no shift in posture, no wag of her tail. After a few more futile attempts and increasingly deflated calls of "Come on, doggy," the family, exchanging disappointed glances, moved on. Later that afternoon, a lone woman with kind, tired eyes sat cross-legged outside the wire mesh. She spoke in soft, reassuring tones, sharing anecdotes about her own childhood dog, her voice a gentle murmur in the bustling corridor. Rue, however, offered no reciprocal gesture. Her gaze, steady and unblinking, met the woman's, an almost ancient calm radiating from her silent form. The woman eventually sighed, a soft sound of resignation, and rose to leave, a lingering look of quiet wonder in her departure. Dr. Eris Thorne, a behavioral specialist with years of experience, observed Rue from a discreet distance during one such encounter. A volunteer, following Thorne's instructions, offered Rue a high-value treat, then attempted a series of gentle, open-handed approaches. Thorne meticulously jotted notes on her pad. No change in respiration. Pupils remain fixed. No social solicitation. Lack of response is consistent with previous observations. Rue simply watched, an unreadable depth in her dark eyes, as if privy to a secret known only to her, preserving an inner quietness that transcended the human efforts to penetrate it. The puzzle of Rue. The shelter director, Brenda, tapped a manicured nail against Rue's thick file. Perfect health reports, every single one, she murmured, scanning the vet's latest assessment. No injuries, no underlying conditions, nothing to explain the dog's profound stillness. It was a blank slate where there should have been a story of trauma or illness. What do you think she's waiting for? Sarah asked Liam, leaning against the counter near the kennels. The clang of a distant food bowl echoed in the large room. Rue lay in her usual spot, head resting on her paws, dark eyes tracking a volunteer walking past without a flicker of excitement. Liam shrugged, scrubbing at a smudge on the counter. Could be anything, or nothing. She just watches. He remembered the last behavioral evaluation just a week prior. The evaluator, a gentle woman with years of experience, had sat cross-legged in the run, offering treats, speaking in soothing tones. Rue had simply observed her, a quiet sentinel, her tail never once stirring. No aggression, no fear, just an unshakable neutrality. It's like she's got a secret, Sarah mused, her gaze fixed on the quiet black dog. Most dogs, you can read them. With Rue, it's a total mystery. The air in the shelter, usually a symphony of barks and whines, felt particularly quiet around Rue's kennel, almost reverent in its silence. Brenda closed the file with a soft snap, a knot of concern tightening in her stomach. 7 months was a long time for any dog, but for one so outwardly perfect, it was baffling. Quiet arrival. The heavy glass doors of the shelter side shut behind Mark and his caseworker, Sarah, muffling the distant city hum. Mark's gaze skimmed the brightly lit lobby, not truly seeing, his shoulders curving inward as if to deflect any unwanted attention. He kept his eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor, a familiar weight settling in his chest. The air was thick with the faint, mingled sense of cleaning solution and damp fur, a stark contrast to the sterile quiet he'd grown accustomed to. "Good afternoon," Sarah's voice, a steadying presence, cut through the quiet. She approached the reception desk, her movements efficient and practiced. "Sarah Jenkins from Veteran Outreach. We have an appointment regarding the companion animal program." Mark remained a step behind her, a silent shadow. He could feel the receptionist's curious glance flit over him, but he offered no acknowledgement. His hands were tucked into his pockets, fingers tracing the worn seams of his jeans. He just wanted to get through this, whatever this was going to be. Another hurdle, another attempt to bridge the widening chasm between himself and the world. He heard the rustle of papers, the soft clack of a keyboard, and Sarah's polite, professional tone. He waited, his mind a quiet, distant hum, for the next instruction, the next place he was supposed to be. A moment's pause. Sarah, Mark's caseworker, paused before Rue's kennel, the slight rustle of papers as she consulted her clipboard the only sound in the immediate vicinity. Mark stood a step behind her, his gaze fixed on the scuffed concrete floor, a familiar weight pressing down on him. He was a still point in the bustling shelter, his presence almost spectral. Rue, who had been a dark, unmoving shape at the back of her kennel, slowly, deliberately, rose to her feet. It was a fluid motion, unhurried, as if she were shaking off a long slumber. Her dark eyes, usually calm and distant, were now fixed, not on Sarah, but on the silent figure behind her. She moved to the gate, her nose pressing gently against the cold wire mesh, a soft, almost imperceptible nudge. Mark remained oblivious, lost in the intricate patterns of dust and grit on the floor. He missed the subtle shift in the air, The way Rue's stillness had transformed into an expectant presence. The dog's quiet break from routine went unnoticed by him, a silent ripple in the otherwise placid pool of his attention. The unspoken connection. The scent of pine cleaner and stale kibble usually clung to Rue's fur, but today, a new, earthy aroma filled her senses. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it drew her forward with an undeniable pull. Sarah's familiar voice offered soothing reassurances, but Rue barely registered the sound. Her gaze was fixed on the man standing behind the caseworker. His head bowed, a quiet sorrow emanating from him like a palpable aura. With a decisive step, Rue moved from the back of her run, ignoring the open kennel door and Sarah's outstretched hand. She walked directly to the chain-link fence, her powerful frame pressing gently against the cool metal. Her dark nose, damp and curious, poked through one of the diamond-shaped openings, pointing directly at Mark. Mark, his eyes still fixed on the scuffed concrete floor, felt a soft nudge against his fingers. He hadn't consciously lifted his hand, but it was there, hovering just beyond the wire mesh. Without a word, without even shifting his weight, he slowly extended his fingers a fraction further, slipping them through the gap. Rue, usually so reserved, remained perfectly still. She didn't lick, didn't nuzzle, but simply rested her head into his open palm, her fur a warm, soft counterpoint to the rough metal of the fence. A profound stillness settled over them, an unspoken understanding passing between the man and the dog. Sarah, observing from a respectful distance, took an involuntary step back, her clipboard forgotten. The shelter director emerged from her office, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the ventilation system. Then, Mark's voice, a low rumble, broke the silence. How does the adoption process work? A quiet request. The hushed hum of the HVAC system filled the space as the shelter director, Mrs. Albright, emerged from her office. Her brow, usually furrowed with the endless tasks of running the shelter, was smoothed by a profound astonishment. She'd seen countless bonds form here, but none quite like this. Mark, who had barely lifted his gaze from the scuffed linoleum since arriving, now held Rue's head gently in his hand. The black lab, typically a still shadow in her kennel, rested her entire weight into his touch, her eyes, usually observant and distant, now soft and trusting. The caseworker, sensing the delicate gravity of the moment, remained perfectly still, her clipboard forgotten. The air thickened with unspoken emotion, a fragile bridge forming between man and dog. Mark's head was still angled downwards, but his focus was entirely on Rue. His thumb stroked the velvet fur behind her ears, a rhythm both tentative and assured. After a long beat, a quiet sigh escaped him. He finally lifted his eyes, not to the caseworker, nor to Mrs. Albright, but to Rue. Then his gaze shifted to the shelter director. His voice, a low rumble that cut through the silence, was surprisingly firm. How does the adoption process work for her? A new beginning. The shelter director, a woman whose face usually held the weariness of too many goodbyes, beamed as she pushed the adoption papers across the counter. All set, Mr. Everett. Rue is officially yours. The staff, usually bustling with quiet efficiency, paused their tasks, their smiles mirroring the director's. A palpable sense of relief and joy filled the air, a rare lightness in a place often heavy with unspoken hopes. Mark, his gaze still mostly averted, offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. He signed the final document with a steady hand, a faint flush rising to his cheeks. When a new, sturdy leash was handed to him, he took it, his fingers brushing against the soft nylon. He knelt by Rue, who sat patiently beside him, her black fur sleek under the fluorescent lights. His movements were slow, deliberate, as he unclipped the old, worn lead and fastened the new one to her collar. A genuine, soft smile touched his lips, a fleeting glimpse of the warmth hidden beneath his quiet exterior. Rue's tail gave a single, gentle thump against the linoleum. As they approached the main exit, the automatic doors hissed open, revealing the bright afternoon sun. Mark didn't rush. He walked with an unhurried pace, Rue falling into step beside him. Her tail began a slow, rhythmic wag, a quiet drumbeat of contentment. She lifted her head, sniffing the fresh air, her eyes, usually so observant and distant, now held a soft focus on the man beside her. They stepped out into the world, no longer two isolated beings, but a pair, embarking on a journey together, finally home.